So let's actually look at an activity statement. You'll see that revenues are actually classified in their proper column. So as donors give support in the form of contributions, as we earn revenue, those items will go in the unrestricted, temporarily restricted, or permanently restricted columns. All right, so you want to make sure people understand how much money you actually have for this or that. Next thing, expenses are always unrestricted, right? It's like you're just paying them out, right? So you're using up assets. So you've used something up, it doesn't really matter if it's restricted, unrestricted, or whatever. We don't characterize those. There are two categories of expenses, and I talked about program service expenses and supporting. So you can see here in the animal shelter, they've got adoption services, spay and neuter clinic, educational programs, total programs. So that's a program expense. Supporting is things like administration, fundraising. When we spend cash according to donor's wish, we reclassify it from temporarily restricted to unrestricted. And finally, revenues minus expenses is called change in net assets, right? Because we're not for profit, so it's not called net income. But it does change our net assets, and that moves over to the statement of position, financial position. Okay. So not-for-profits do cash flows, just like you're used to. So no worries, operating, investing, and financing. And of course, you remember, governmental was a little weird, but operating is just like you understand it. Investing, just like you understand it this time. Capital expenditures are going under investing. And financing is basically debt. There's not equity, there's no stock. So really, the financing portion is your debt. And like a business, you can use direct or indirect. Remember, governmental, they had to use direct. Now we have this extra interesting financial statement. It's just really a spreadsheet that gets reported out with the other financial statements for the voluntary health and welfare organization. So not every not-for-profit would put this out. But what we're wanting to see is what is falling under supporting and what is falling under program, right? Because people want to make sure you're not paying that executive millions of dollars to run the dog shelter, right? People get really mad when the United Way executive travels in limos and first-class airfare, right? So they want to know about that stuff, and it makes sense. You should. I want my money to help people, not make somebody eat rich. All right. So it's just about helping donors assess the efficiency, and you can decide, that's not where I want to spend my money when I donate it, or yeah, that's a good program. I'm going to give money to them. All right. So when people make contributions, it's recognized as contribution revenue, and it's at the fair market value because sometimes contributions aren't cash, right? I mean, I always think about, I made a donation, but I did 40 myself, not counting supervising students, not doing that. I did 40 tax returns for people on the VITA program. I donated that, and it's for the federal government, so they don't do this, but you can imagine if I was doing that for United Way or something, that would have been a donation to them. All right, so when people make contributions, it's contribution revenue and it's fair market value. All right. So exchange transactions are just regular revenues. So like the YMCA, you're a member. That's not a contribution. right? That's an exchange transaction. I'm going to swim here every day, so I'm going to pay my fees. I mean, it could be at a for-profit gym, it could be at YMCA, right? So you have to make sure you understand what's a contribution and what's actual exchange. And you have to keep track of what's restricted permanently and temporarily and what's unrestricted. Remember, talking about restrictions is when the donor imposes it. Donor imposed means, hey YMCA, here's some money. I want you to use it to pay for kids to go to YMCA camp. That's a restriction. All right. Let's stop right there, and we'll distinguish out how pledges are slightly different from actual contribution. Right? A contribution, you understand that's happened, right? That went on. And how does a pledge work?